I really think every single thing we go through in life helps us build that foundation, right, of where we're going to be. But, in the time I was a Denny's waitress, here's really where my gut started speaking to me. And this is for everybody out there. It's never too late to start learning how to hear your own intuition, right? Most people never do. But just like faith or like anything else, I think it's never too late. I think everyone can start now. And I really think that it's a journey. It's a journey of building on experiences and then looking back and going, oh, I didn't listen to my gut there. I had that instinct and it didn't go so well.
A handful of things that you said jumped out at me that I want to put a pin in and come back to. You talked about the role of quitting. And I couldn't agree more that this concept of sort of, always push through. And I think if you had owned that idea in the way that it's talked about in our culture, you'd probably still be a TV journalist. So what is the difference between quitting what you thought was your dream job, or what is the balance between quitting what you thought was your dream job and trusting your intuition to do something outside of that seems risky and unknown and scary? Help us understand how, what was going on in your mind, because there's so many people right now listening that are like, that's me. I got a good thing. I want to chase my dreams. I want to trust my gut, but I'm not quite sure what it's telling me.
Yeah. And I think learning to get still and actually hear our own gut is so important. And I think it's so hard. I think that, we all, I believe, Chase, I believe we all have this knowing, right? Like, to your point, there's so many people probably listening right now, watching right now, that if they were to just get still for a minute and check in with their gut, even if they're rusty on doing this, right? Mm-hmm. They usually know if they're in the right job or in the right relationship, or if they need to maybe end a friendship, or they know if they have more inside of them, and it's on their heart to write a book or to take that first step and start photography, right? Whatever that is, if we get still, I really believe we all have that knowing. And I think that learning, one of the things I talk about a lot in the book is, how do you start building that muscle again of intuition and learning to trust it? Because I think, for something, it's for so many of us, it's a lifelong journey of really learning how. And it's like we keep refining our intuition as we go. But what I see happening now, and I have the blessing of mentoring, so many entrepreneurs now and a lot of women. And what I see happening so often is that, as we go on in life, we literally stop learning how to hear our own gut and stop listening to it. And I think part of that is because, first of all, the noise of self-doubt and our own inner critic gets so loud all around us that sometimes it's hard to even break through and know what is our own knowing anymore. We then often have, other people's opinions. And sometimes that can come in the form of people we love so much, like our inner circle, our friends, our family, who love us and often, and usually they'll mean well, but they often can't see the potential of our own hopes and dreams because they're seeing it through the lens of their own limitations, right? And their own fear and their own life experience. And so all of a sudden we have, all the noise of and by the way, anyone who's been an entrepreneur or is right now, often we all share, right? We share an experience where, at some point, I can share my own. At some point when I was getting no traction in my business the first 3 years, I had so many people say are you sure you should have quit your job? Are you sure you're qualified to be doing this? Are you I love you, but I'm worried about you. Are you, all those things, right? And we have to be so careful because at some point that noise can get so loud too. Then if anyone out there who's going through an experience like I went through for a number of years, when I first launched the business, I had these experts that I would put on a pedestal. And in my case, it was all the department stores that, as a Denny's waitress, I would save my tip money to buy a makeup product in one of those department stores. And I just thought, wow, if they carry my product, this is going to be amazing. And all the, QVC and the beauty retailers, I put them on a pedestal. And so for the first 3 years of my business, when all of them said no over and over and over and said I wasn't the right fit, or I needed to not use real women as models, I needed to do the I call it antiquated standard of beauty, which is like flawless Photoshop skin. They all told me that's what I need to do to sell product. And it was 3 years of them basically saying, and some of them in these actual words, you're not the right fit for us or for our customers. And, so we get experts telling us that, or for a lot of us, it's just like no traction that we thought was going to happen with our dream or our idea or our creation or our sales of our product or business. So we have all of that. And then we turn the news on and we're like, right. So all of this is going on, and it's so hard if we don't take a big step back. And this is one of the things that, again, I share so much that I did wrong too. It'll hopefully save people a lot of nights crying themselves to sleep. But one of the things I did right was like learn how to really get still and hear my own knowing, and my own knowing that said you're supposed to keep going or you're not. And to me, trusting ourselves, when we learn to hear ourselves and trust ourselves, that's the victory in life. The victory isn't like, building $1 billion company, or this. To me, it's learning how to get still and trust our knowing, and know that we're on our own path of becoming all of who we are and who we're born to be. And I think what happens, because it's so easy to let this happen, is all the noise from everyone else and our own self-doubt, all of it gets so loud that it becomes so much easier to just like stay in our comfort zone and not go after the dream when it seems hard, or not keep going, even though, you know what I mean? Even though like we feel like we should, it becomes easier to just stay in our comfort zone, which comes at the price of, I think, it starts to chip away at our soul. We start to risk talking ourselves out of our own truth and never become the person we're born to be. Not to be all dramatic on your show, but like that's really to me what it is. It's like we literally can talk ourselves out of our own truth and never become the person we're born to be. And how many people do we know that have done that? So many, the majority, right? And that's what I think is the biggest challenge as a creator, as someone with a dream on your heart, as someone who knows you have more to give or serve or love, is how do you step into that?
It's so true. And it's hard to overstate. I want to join in your symphony here. This idea that the advice comes from people that you admire, you've spent so much time learning about and thinking about, as you said, and some of the people that are closest to you that love you dearly and certainly don't want to see you in pain. And I think those voices are trusted is part of what makes playing through and trusting your gut and following your intuition, all the things that you said, so hard. And so to underscore your point, quiet, still awareness of who you are and what you believe in. It sounds easy just to say, listen to that, but I believe it's hard. And so I'm wondering if you can share some of the specifics. Do you go on a 10-day Vipassana no talking retreat? Do you go on a long sojourn in the mountains? Is it a daily meditation, mindfulness, prayer practice? Like what are some of the things that you did to actually quiet the noise? Because right now everyone would like to quiet those voices in their head, but help us see it through your eyes.
I've never done one of those retreats, but I would love to.
My wife is a super retreater. She is like, she teaches meditation and mindfulness. So she's always gone for 10 days and comes back like this enlightened being. And I'm toiling away and doing the dishes or whatever. But I too endeavored to do that one day, but I want to know what your process is.
Yeah. So, for me, I I think everyone can do this. I think that it all starts, and this is how I started, because this, at the end of the day, my book is not just some big business success story. My book is really a story about a girl who went from not believing in herself to believing in herself and not knowing how to hear my own intuition, right? To learning how, and then learning how to trust it. and really a journey of going from doubting I'm enough to knowing I'm enough. And, I just think, it's the story of so many other people right now as well on their own journey of learning to do that, learning to believe in themselves and trust themselves and know they're enough. And for me, it started with really basic, simple, like taking 3 to 5 minutes a day. That's it. And so for some people, they have chaos going on in their house. They have kids running everywhere. They have all this stuff, right? Especially right now in this season that we're in. And so, it can be as simple even as, going and sitting in the car. And a lot of parents will understand that one. Going and sitting in the car by yourself for 2 minutes. Or, going into your bathroom and closing the door. And it starts just, I think the best way for me, I've been able to really build my intuition over the years is just to take 2 to 5 minutes and actually start to learn, what does it even feel like? What do I even think and feel in my knowing about anything, right? And I think for a lot of people that start this, because for a lot of people hearing their own knowing, it'll be the first time ever, or the first time in a long time once they start doing this again. And I think that it's critical to everything in life to get back in touch with this. But, it can be as simple as 2 to 5 minutes of literally just sitting there and just saying, what do I feel and think? And, asking yourself a question and seeing if you answer it. For a lot of people, by the way, this is how they hear God or whatever faith it is they practice, through their own gut or their own intuition. And, I think it's something that we all have to give ourselves grace in the process of, because I think, well, at least what happened for me, and I know a lot of other people too, is that, you try to do it. And just like trying to meditate for the first time, you're like, oh, I tried to do it, but I'm running through my to-do list in my own mind and, all the things of the day. And like, that's so normal. And you just have to give yourself grace and really work on building that muscle. The other thing is to, really start to pay attention and think through, are there experiences in your life where you trusted yourself, that gut feeling, and it worked? And really reflect on those, right? And pay attention to them. And also, are there times when you just had this gut feeling, like maybe you're dating and you have this feeling like, oh, he's sketchy, and he says his phone broke for 3 days in a row. And he or she is lying, right? But you make the decision to ignore your gut. And then, we always learn the truth in the end. It plays out. But like paying attention to like all the times, because for all of us, we have those moments in life continually. And a lot of times we just go so fast through life. We're so busy. We live almost numb in a way. And we disconnect or disassociate from those moments that are our most powerful teachers. And listen, I think I continuously do this to this day as I look back. And one of the things when I look back at some of the biggest miscalculations I've had or mistakes I've made, a lot of times they come down to not listening to my gut and or doubting it, thinking, one story just to share is after 3 years of hearing no from, all of these beauty retailers, because I launched the company in my living room and couldn't afford to hire anyone for the first 3 years. And my husband and I were just kind of doing every job we possibly could do. And I got to the point, it was so scrappy, Chase, like my middle name is Marie, and Marie got her own email address at one point. So it was Marie at itcosmetics.com, and she was heading customer service and PR. And like, if this were today, Marie would be emailing, Chase Jarvis, great news. Our founder's available for an interview. And like, she would pitch Good Morning America, everybody, and often get no reply or ignored. But Marie hustled, and, we did so many scrappy things for years when we couldn't afford to hire anyone. And when all these retailers were saying no. And then I'll never forget one powerful story to share in case someone listening needs to hear this right now. And maybe they're going through a season of rejection, or they're going through a season of being told they're not enough, or just feeling like they're not enough. I remember, and by the way, I would email LinkedIn, everyone in LinkedIn who worked at QVC or Sephora or anywhere, I would email them and send them product. And it was just 3 years of hustling and everyone saying no. And I'd finally gotten a guy named Alan Burke who headed all of beauty at QVC, to review my products and get on a phone call with me. And he is in the beauty industry, he's a legend, right? So he's responsible for bringing all of the really amazing department store brands we all know onto QVC, which QVC is a live television shopping channel. So it's broadcast to 100 million homes live, and their sales goals are super high. And what I learned is
I've watched your clip so many times. It's
incredible.
It's amazing. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but it is, if you haven't watched it, yeah, of course, it's incredible.
Well, you know what I didn't, so I didn't know a lot of things going into this experience in my life, but I learned from other entrepreneurs that you can sell more in an hour show on QVC than all year in department stores, because so many people watch it and they have such a large, loyal customer following. And so anyhow, I finally got Alan Burke on a phone call. And I thought, okay, we were down to no money. I didn't know how we were going to survive. And I'll never forget, the phone rang and he's like, "Hello, Jamie, Alan Burke from QVC." And I just thought, oh my gosh, if this legend is going to be on the phone with me and spend his precious time, it's got to be a yes, right? It's got to be a yes. And I was like, Alan, and I was trying to muster up every ounce of confidence. And I was trying to tell myself, like, they're lucky to have us. Like, be confident, Jamie. They're lucky to have us, even though they had said no for years, right? And so I was pacing around. I'll never forget, I was pacing around our office, which was our living room in our apartment. And I said, Alan, it's Jamie Kern Lima. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. And he says, well, I want to let you know we've reviewed your products with all of our buyers. It's a unanimous agreement that it's a no. We're going to pass. You're not right for QVC or for our customers. You're not the right fit. But thank you. And so right away I went into oh, but I am the right fit. And I tried to pour my heart out again to getting him to care. And he's like, thank you for loving QVC, but it's a no. And I remember this moment because tears were streaming down my face, right? Because I didn't know how we were going to stay in business. And I thanked him for his time. And I literally crawled under the covers in my bed and cried myself to sleep, and then woke up the next morning hoping it was a dream. It's a bad dream. Have you ever had that happen where you get really bad news and then and you wake up and you're like, oh, it was real. And so that happened 3 days in a row. And I remember this time, and these are the moments I think that define us in life, when we can really learn to hear our knowing. I talk a lot in the book about creating this imaginary toolbox of things I pull from. Like, it could be quotes, it could be excerpts from your show, right? It could be, I have underdog stories. I have things that just remind me of who I am, of what I'm made of. And I pull from them when I need it. And so I was, doing that. And I was also just checking in and even sobbing myself to sleep 3 days in a row. When I would get still and check in with my own gut, it kept saying I was supposed to keep going. And these are the moments I think that define our life, because I didn't know at that time I would create what's now the largest beauty company in the country, right? Like, I didn't know any of that. All I knew is for 3 years, everyone said no. And I finally got the head guy, Alan Burke, on a phone call, legend in the beauty space. And he tells me I'm not the right fit for QVC or for him. And 3 days later, after crying I check in with my gut, and it says, you're supposed to keep going. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, you're not supposed to quit. And that knowing and making that decision to trust it is how I kept going. And, to put a really fun bow on this story, in case anyone listening needs this right now.
We all need it, Jamie.
I just think, you know what, Chase, it's like sometimes we go through these seasons of rejection and they don't make sense and they hurt. And it's so easy to have them all equate to just self-doubt in our own head and doubt of our dreams. And that's why I just think checking in with our knowing and trusting it is so important. But I kept going and kept going. And when I shared this story in the book, and it's a long one, so I'll skip it now, but I'll skip the how. But eventually, through a trade show, through a really cool moment, through a gutsy moment of me taking a big risk, got a yes to get one shot on QVC. So this is after 3 years of no's. It's we got down to under $1,000 in our bank account, which was our personal and our company combined. And I finally got one shot and our first really big yes to go on QVC. But here's what that meant, Chase. It meant, and we were only selling 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, right? And barely staying alive. And I learned, okay, you get one shot. You're going to get one shot to present your product live on QVC, and you're going to get a 10-minute window. And you either need to hit the sales goal or not come back. I was like, okay. And what that meant was I had to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer. We were only doing 2 to 3 orders a day on our site. That is over 6,000 units of our concealer.
In 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, live on live television, no script, no teleprompter, nothing. And then to top it all off, and anyone who runs a business where they're making product, they'll understand this part, but it was a consignment deal. And what that meant was we had to pay for all the own inventory ourselves, ship it in, and we wouldn't get paid for anything except for what ended up selling in that 10-minute window. And whatever didn't sell would be shipped back to us. And in our case,
you own it. Yeah, you own it then, right?
And because we were only doing 2 to 3 orders a day, it was like, oh, if anything got shipped back to us, I mean, there was nowhere to sell it. Like we would be completely out of business and bankrupt. And so it was a really tough decision. But after 3 years of everyone saying no, we decided to take this risk and applied for 22 SBA loans that all said no. And the 23rd SBA loan gave us enough money to cover just the inventory cost of this one shot on QVC. So it's a moment that would end up being one of the most defining moments in my whole career, but also life so far. And I think it's a universal moment because, you know, a lot of times all of us will have moments where we know what we stand for, we know what we believe in, but then all of a sudden our values are challenged or everything's on the line. And that's what happened here. We made all the inventory, did everything, and we're ready to get our one shot on QVC. And I was so stressed out and felt so much pressure because I knew this one shot would like literally make or break our whole company. So I flew out to QVC a week early before the one airing, and I sat in this rental car in the parking lot, praying, crying, so overwhelmed because what ended up happening was, you know, we hired third-party consultants that are experts, and they help so many people sell their products live on TV. They're amazing. But they all told us the same thing, which is that, okay, if you want your best shot at success in this 10-minute window, you need to use these type of models that all have perfect skin. And I'm like, okay, but that's exactly why I'm not doing the business. Like I'm doing this to try and actually shift culture and beauty and do something bigger than myself. And I have this vision that I'm going to, use, models that have real skin problems and all ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones. And they would just look at me and tell me, like, listen, if you want our advice and the best shot at success, here's what you need to do. And so I started arguing with them and saying, okay, but I get that's how it's always been done. And I get that's the only way it's been successful so far. But intuitively, if I'm sitting at home watching this TV show and I see models that don't look like me, how do I know the product's going to work for me? And we would kind of get into it. And I was like, what if I just take my makeup off on national TV and show my bright red rosacea? And they were mortified at that idea. You know what I mean? And so it was really tricky because sometimes we have moments in life where, like, we have to decide, do you put the experts on a pedestal or your own intuition on one? You know what I mean? And that's hard, and especially hard when everything's on the line. So I sat in that car and cried because that just felt like the right thing at the time. And just, it felt like such a big decision. And I thought, okay, well, what if I do what they're saying to do and then I become successful, then I try it my way? I'm like, well, I know you can't fake authenticity. You know what I mean? And I would have regrets if I did that. So I knew what I needed to do, but it's like sometimes we know the right thing to do, but it's the hard thing to do. And I sat there in that car and and I think a lot of creators or people that have vision and big dreams will be able to connect with this, where I just sat there and said, why am I doing what I'm doing and who am I doing this for? And I kept imagining, like, who would that woman be watching on the other end? And if I was going to get one shot, and that's it. And I kept imagining like a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry for some reason. I imagined it like who was too busy to remember she mattered and that she's beautiful and all those things. And if she was going to give me a few seconds of her precious time and turn the television on and see me, like, I'd rather have her see me showing women who look like her, calling them beautiful, meaning it, and have her not buy anything. Like, I'd rather do that than sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so it was like, I knew what I had to do, but I was also scared. And you know, the to complete the story, the 10-minute.
We love, like, this is why this format exists. Please, Jamie, just keep going. This is amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing these. I mean, I just feel like we're all in this together. You know what I mean? And it's part of why I wrote this book, but also like part of why I'm so excited to be on your show. And thank you again for having me. Is I think when we share these real stories, right? Because no one would know these things when they just go, oh, there's a really,
she made it.
Yeah, totally. And that's all you ever see online. Oh, she made it. So, you know, but these are universal experiences, I think. And a lot of people don't talk about them. And when you look on social media, you just see everyone's highlight reel and you don't see the rejection or the pain or any of the things that we go through. And when we don't see them, then we just feel alone in them, you know? And so
we're comparing our day-to-day crappy experiences of the, you know, forgetting to turn the dryer on before you go to bed so that when you wake up, your clothes are wet. We have the experience of getting a parking ticket, and we're comparing all those aspects of our lives to everyone else's highlight reel that you see on TV, or in your case, the product in the store. And I agree, it's toxic. And I want to say thank you for having the courage to be as vulnerable as you are in the book.
That was amazing. But now, are you ready to get into the weeds on this idea?
Let's do it.
In your book, you talk about developing your intuition. How do people develop their intuition so that when they need to turn to it and they learn to be still and listen to it, that it actually gives them good advice?
Yeah. The very first step is to pay attention, right? Listen, we are so busy in our lives right now. And so many of us, with all the stuff going on with the pandemic, with this, with that, with our job, and then frankly, at the end of some days, all I want to do is scroll Instagram, or like yesterday, eat candy hearts for Valentine's Day. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to like actually put in the work, but I believe that it's so important. Like, if someone's going to do anything, and you hear so much about morning routine or this or that or whatever, taking 5 minutes a day and just starting building that muscle. And at first it may make no sense, right? Especially because so many people are out of practice, but literally getting still, even if you have to just go sit in a closet, leave your phone out, just go sit in a closet and just see what you think. And you know, and can you hear your own truth? And another thing I would say, just as a real fundamental level, is to look back at your past, because I believe it's something we build over time if we pay attention, right? And I can say that most of my mistakes I've made when I look back is because I didn't trust my own gut and I trusted my mind instead. And my mind was able to say, oh, these are all the experts. They're experts for a reason. They're touted visionaries, and they're telling you to change this about your product packaging, or they're telling you to do this about, and they have a proven track record and you don't. So even though, Jamie, you have some gut feeling, like, go, you know, my mind won. And when that's happened, those are some of my biggest mistakes. And I think looking back on that's important, just to like break it down at a real fundamental level. So many of us have dated the person we know is not right for us. You know what I mean? But we know, right? And I can think of times where I was dating a guy who I was so into, and like his phone broke and he disappeared. And I knew he's lying. I knew it, but I didn't want to know it. I didn't want to know it, right? So what happens? I'm like, oh, well, it's only the first time it's ever happened. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe all the things, right? I know he's sketchy. I know he's lying, right? But sometimes we know, and this is such a basic example, and we just choose to not to talk ourselves out of it anyway, right? And I think that every human being can really actually just put in a little time thinking about different moments in their life and actually start to remember, like, did I have a gut feeling about this at the time or did I not? Or, was there a time I listened to that inner knowing and I was right? Right? And we start thinking about those times and it starts to build up our own trust in ourselves over time. And for me, this was a huge way that I was able to keep going. You mentioned one thing that I remember, Tom, after, we were a couple years into our business and I had been sending our product out to all the retailers and saying, hey, I want to show models that actually have skin challenges like I do. And that had never been done before, right? And I wanted to do all these things. And they were all telling me no, and it's not the right fit. And I knew my product was really good. I learned the hard lesson a lot of entrepreneurs learn, that you can have a great product or a great course or a great service but that's not enough. Like, people have to know it exists, right? And when you have no money and no ad budget, that's really hard. And this is 2008, 2009, 2010. YouTube wasn't huge yet. So no one had gone out there and said, oh, instead of overly photoshopped, perfect skin models, let's show real people with real skin challenges and all ages and sizes and skin tones. And that's what I had this vision for, because that's what I was, and we created a product that was so good. And then after all these rejections from all the department stores, all the beauty stores saying, no, thank you, it's a pass, your product will never sell, those kind of images don't work. I had one store tell me women will only buy from an aspirational image of beauty they'll never be able to look like. If they can actually look that way, they won't buy it. And it was just like over and over and over rejection. And I'll never forget this one moment, just to share as an example, because it helped me develop my intuition muscle so strongly. But we had gotten an inbound call from a potential investor, and they were a really well-known private equity company, and they invested in a lot of consumer products in the grocery stores, like household names that we buy. They loved our product. And so we started taking meetings with them, and I was so freaking excited because I felt like, oh my gosh, if they invest in us, then maybe they'll use their leverage to get us into these retailers. And also I won't go bankrupt and all those things. And there's that. And so we did meetings. We started the diligence phase. We presented product pipelines, all that stuff. And it got down to the last meeting, and my husband and I flew there for the meeting. And it was the head guy. He was standing about 3 feet from me. And I thought it was going to be like the best day of my life, right? And I'll never forget, he was 3 feet away and he says to me, I just don't think women, well, he said, it's a no, we're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. And like, I'd heard no thousands of times, right? So I'm like devastated, but I'm like, okay, can you share why? Because feedback is usually a gift. And he says, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I said, yes. And he literally was 3 feet from me. And he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And I remember when he said that to me, a bunch of things happened. The first thing was I remember feeling like my whole body fled with like a lifetime of body issues, body doubt and self-doubt. And I felt all that. So it kind of felt like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye, talking to him. I never felt anger toward him. I felt hurt and crushed. But I also got this feeling. I'll never forget this, Tom. I'll never forget this the rest of my life. I got this feeling, like literally in my gut, like a knowing he's wrong. Even though I was still doubting myself, even though I had dealt with like a lifetime of body doubt, I got this feeling he's wrong. And I remember that feeling because I remember then for a few years wondering, like, am I right or is he right? I would still doubt myself, right? And I went out in my car and I cried, and I had to figure out how do I turn down the volume in my own head and not replay those hurtful words over and over and over? But I also remember that feeling I got. And I don't, this is a big business thing, not to be off topic, but like one of the things I did do right was I never took rejection personally in business, right? I always figured out how to go, okay, like if this is a game of chess, maybe we will partner one day. So I'm just going to pretend we are with every retailer, and I'm just going to keep sending them product and keep sending them updates and keep telling them I can't wait till I'm in your store, no matter how bad that rejection hurt. And in his case, what I realized also was, oh, okay, the reason I'm creating this company, I want to try to shift culture and beauty. I want to try to use different images of models. And he's literally passing on investing in my company because he is just as much influenced by a lifetime of seeing beauty images too. So he believes also, whether he realizes it or not, you have to look a certain way to sell products. And the last thing I'll say about that is I do believe in that famous saying that like rejection's God's protection, right? And you could say rejection's the universe's protection. I do believe in sayings like that. And when you fast forward 6 years later, the day that L'Oreal bought It Cosmetics, it was all over the Wall Street Journal homepage. It was everywhere online because they're a public company. So that means for them, they decided to release the purchase price, everything. I got an email from that guy, from that investor. I got an email that day that said, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. I was wrong. But the other thing, when I talk about like rejection is God's protection, I really believe that because even though we don't see it at the time and it doesn't make sense at the time, but like I was so desperate, Tom, I would have probably given him the majority of the company for like almost no money. And because he didn't believe in us and because so many people rejected us along the way, by the time we did sell our business to L'Oreal, we're still the largest shareholders. So it was like, there's so many situations like that. But anyhow, that deep knowing, that knowing he's wrong, that's an example of, okay, looking back over time, where did I make mistakes and where did I do things right? And then we refine that muscle of learning, oh yeah, learning to trust ourselves.
There's so much in that is extraordinary. We're now going to test my abilities as an interviewer to see if I can tease out some of the things that you talk about in the book to put a capstone on this idea of training your intuition. So I have a deep and abiding fear of being spiritual entertainment. People will be moved by you. They will be moved by your story. But if they're very careful and they pay close attention, it will change how they move through the world, certainly as a person just pursuing goals, but potentially even as somebody who wants to start their own business.
Do you believe that your optimism allows this all to work? Because if you are looking at losses as in, well, this was meant to be part of my journey and this scar is actually attractive, because that's how I think about it. I think about all those losses as scars and like that scar giving you character and that's attractive. Do you believe that optimism was an incredibly big factor and ingredient in your success?
I think optimism is great. I think, though, that knowing why we're doing what we're doing, listening to our gut and going after our calling, like literally living our calling, I think that's the victory.
Hold on, though.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. Every human needs levels of affirmation along the way to sustain that. Right? Yeah. And so in the beginning where you're not seeing those results, for many, and you might have, I've always seen results pretty quickly in my good calls. So I always try to think about someone who's not seeing it. So because they don't have optimism, they have delusion and they think they're going to be, Beyonce when they can't sing, right? Do you feel like believing in your calling gets affirmed along the way? What do you rely on in that beginning? Don't you think blind faith is actually completely grounded in optimism?
I mean, for me, my faith is a huge part of my life.
I'm going to take religion as faith out. I'm saying I'm just thinking about you, young you in this moment, and I'm really fascinated by it. I'm meant to do this because what you're talking about is what I love, which is the journey.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into your. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think the victory is the outcome, right? I don't think the victory. Listen, I know how accomplished you are and everything. I know you're going to have the New York Jets one day. I know all that. But I don't think that's the victory. I think the victory is the journey of actually like stepping into all of who you are and not talking yourself out of your own truth. And what I mean by that is this journey of that we're talking about, right? Of course, optimism, of course, resiliency to get back up every time you're knocked down, of course, all those things. But I think that so many people listening right now, if they don't ever learn to get still and hear their own truth and hear their own intuition, I think what's going to happen, and this is what happens to most people, is they end up staying in their comfort zone. They end up putting their own immediate failures on a pedestal or other people's opinions or self-doubt. They end up talking themselves out of their own truth. And then they end up never actually becoming the person they're born to be. So for me, I don't think like the fact that I was able to build $1 billion company is the victory. I think the moments of me knowing this is what I'm supposed to do and trusting it, even when it doesn't make sense. And I'll give you one example, okay, of this. So, and maybe this will make sense, because optimism, of course, is important, and I know what you're saying. But I think the biggest thing is learning how to hear yourself and trust yourself. I really believe that. There was a moment.
How do you define that as a term? Because I view that as self-belief and confidence and optimism. I think that you're such a, very quickly I'm like, oh, okay, this is my sister. Like literally within the first 3 seconds, I'm like, oh, I see. So I'm trying to do, and I apologize because I'm hoping a different voice might do this for the listener. I'm trying to figure out what words you use to quantify. Yeah. I fully agree with you, everything you're saying. I'm wondering if you view optimism as, so I think optimism, similar to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes gets pegged as delusion.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about, you see where I'm going? Because I could almost feel you doing that right now. And I'm like, I get you, sister. Because like this is why it's so great. Wordsmithing matters, right? Like, for example, hustle has gotten demonized as like burnout. So I no longer use it because I don't need it. You know what I'm going to call it? Work ethic. Call it what you want. Here's what I can tell you. For all the belief you had and all the love you had in doing what you were doing, I'm pretty confident based on your outcome that there was a lot of work ethic there. And so whatever you want to call it, and sometimes I just think about, I know the word hustle triggers people, so I use the word work ethic now because I don't want to ever not let anybody who cares to listen to me not realize that if you don't put in the work, it is impossible. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just had a big aha moment that what you're saying is optimism. I 1,000,000,000% agree with. And I'm thinking of that right now as belief. Same thing. Yep. And now I'm right there with you. Like, here's the thing and then I want to share one quick story with you too, that hopefully someone listening right now maybe needs to hear. But I mean, when I look back, it's like when people are like, oh, how did you start with close to nothing and build $1 billion company? It's like, yeah, I got back up every time I got knocked down, and I followed my gut and I worked really, really hard. But I do think that one of the most important things I did was just like how to build $1 billion company from nothing. Like, I think one of the most important things is making that decision to believe that you can.
Yes.
And for me, that's optimism, exactly what you're saying. And I guess I call it belief. So yeah, 1,000,000% with that. And one more thing, just on maybe people listening to us right now that are like, oh, Gary, like Jamie, I trust my gut sometimes and it's wrong, or I tried it once and it didn't work, or I don't know how to hear my own intuition. I just want to say, I think that it is a muscle that we can all build. And I think people have to give themselves grace, right? It reminds me of like when you start to meditate, a lot of people try it and they can't do it. They're like, they go through their to-do list in their head the whole time they're trying to meditate, but you have to like give yourself grace and start. And what I would say, whether it's entrepreneurs or someone who's 14 years old and out there dating right now, I would say when you start to look back at your experiences and think about moments when you had a gut feeling and you didn't follow it. Like, we've all dated like a sketchy guy or or had and like, you're like, his phone didn't really just shut off for 3 days, or he didn't lose the phone. He went like, and then you kind of make that decision of like, okay.
Talk to me about, I mean, we are really vibing here. I actually want to talk to you offline because I just have had the thought. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm so excited. Insecurity.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, to me, like thinking to my girlfriends, friends that were girls that were dating guys, that I knew what the guys were doing, which was they were preying on my friends' insecurities, and sometimes brilliant, beautiful girls. And I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
This woman, you really triggered something in me. This woman, I'm thinking about 4 or 5 friends through the last 20 years. This woman is subjectively, and if we had 100 people ask, is a million miles better than this man. This man has figured out the cheat code that if he makes her feel insecure, he has the leverage. Thoughts?
Yep. I think that happens every single day. And I think that we look for people that treat us how we believe we deserve to be treated. Like we find partners that meet us.
So you go with, cool, before you worry about jerk off Johnny, this is a big game of your own lack of self-love towards you.
It's your own lack of self-love, because here's the thing, and I don't know your friends, so I'll just say this. I'll make a general statement.
You'll appreciate this. This was mainly 17 to 25 years old, because you see that so commonly there. I mean, in later stages, you know, people are in really deep relationships and you're in different parts of your life. When you're going through high school and college, you're spending so much time with people, you get better reads to the cleanness of the data is like, oh, this is really fucked up. When you're older, you're running in different circles, you don't really get to see it as easily.
Right. And I think that whether, you know, no matter your age, this is what I believe. I think that when someone's treating us like crap and we stay with them, I think it's because we deep down inside don't believe we deserve better yet. And here's the thing, for people like that are dating your friend who's totally screwing them over, right? If you were to bring the best, most amazing, beautifully like kind person into their space, that same girl would probably put them in the friend zone.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, because they don't yet deep down inside believe. Yeah, they deserve more.
And also people value different things through their life. You know, one of the things, you know, right now we live through a generation desperately interested in blaming social media for lack of accountability. They're just pointing fingers, right? Like if you are in a good place with yourself and your perspective is strong around gratitude, an anonymous person's negative comment is not going to ruin your day.
Yeah. And I think when it does, I think that's what's so tough, right? That's when it's a reminder to ourselves, like, oh yeah, we have some more work to do. One of the things I talk about in my book, Believe It, is just that ability to learn to turn down the volume on certain things and turn up the volume on other things. Like one example, we were 3 years into building the company, right? I was hearing no from everyone, Gary, like from all the retailers I dreamed of carrying our products that I used to shop in, right? I would save my tip money, like I mentioned, as a Denny's waitress, and buy products in the department stores or in
what year was this?
So we launched 2007. Like I quit my job 2007. I wrote the business plan on my honeymoon flight to South Africa with my husband. Not the most romantic way to kick off a marriage. And we both got back, quit our jobs, dove all in. I thought, Gary, maybe so many entrepreneurs listening, I thought, oh, if I just pour everything I have and actually create a product that works, like it's just going to sell. If it's that good, it's just going to sell. And then I didn't realize it would be the hard. I mean, I've had a lot of jobs in my life, but being an entrepreneur is by far.
Well, you especially also built that brand different than building a brand today where you can use Shopify and social media to build it. You had to get a yes from Sephora, Ulta, you know, Walmart, Walgreens, and you know, Macy, whoever it was. And that is difficult when you're innovating the way you did. Do you know that my whole life is no? Do you know VaynerMedia? A lot of people listening don't know this. Most brands don't want to say yes to VaynerMedia. We don't want to do a commercial and then go to sleep. Like we don't want to take 12 weeks to do the perfect commercial and then do print ads that look like it, or banner ads, or digital programmatic. My whole life building VaynerMedia is no. Everything I do is Gary V's easy. I just do it with the audience. But VaynerMedia is exactly, I know what you're living through, because when you innovate and you're doing something different and you don't look the part, you didn't work at Procter & Gamble for 13 years.
Yeah.
Or like, what's this Washington State thing? Like you know what it is.
Well, and it's wild because I would go in and start, I would pitch the product, and, we were staying alive on social media. So we were getting, people were writing just blogs at that point, and we were selling like 1 to 3 orders a day on our website, and people were spreading the word. That was the only way we barely stayed alive. But all the retailers, exactly what you said. And by the way, I've learned this, like when you're doing something that's authentic or that is different, but even if it's just authentic to you, even in a crowded industry, by definition, it's novel. By definition, it's never been done before. And I really believe, looking back now at this journey and everything, I believe that like even a lot of visionaries, touted visionaries, I think they can't imagine anything being successful unless subconsciously they have proof in the back that they've already seen it and it's already worked. So it's like, of course, so many people are going to say no to your dream or doubt your dream if they've never seen it done before. And we had 3 years of every single beauty retailer saying, no, you're not the right fit. It's not going to work. You're not right for our customers. And and by the way, we talk about gut feeling. I kept having this gut feeling we're supposed to go on QVC, because then I could actually show my bright red rosacea and prove live that our product works, unlike the photoshopped ads on TV. And this is just something to share for someone who might need to hear this right now, who's having a gut feeling, but they feel like they're wrong. Like I kept having this feeling. And every time I would do a meeting with QVC, it would be a no. Every phone call I'd finally get, I got their head guy, Alan Burke, on the phone. He's like a legend. He's responsible for building this $1 billion beauty empire on QVC. And I finally got him on a call, and I thought for sure it was going to be a yes. And because if he's taking his precious time, and it was about a minute into the call, and he said, I just need to let you know, we've reviewed your product with all the buyers. It's unanimous. It's a no. You're not the right fit for QVC. And of course, I poured my heart out. I'm like, oh, but I am the right fit. And then we were down to under $1,000 in our bank account at that point. So I remember crying myself to sleep. And long story short, a year later, when I finally did get a yes to go on QVC, I took this big risk that I was advised not to by consultants. And I put real women of all shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges. And I showed my own bare face and all the things that had never been done before. We sold out at the 10-minute mark. I was crying on national television because it's live. QVC is live to 100 million homes.
You knew the truth, and your heart would win, not, students telling you what to do.
Yeah, and listen, it was a big risk, but I feel like I know this lesson that I know this, and now I've seen it play out with thousands of entrepreneurs over the years, but I know that authenticity alone doesn't guarantee success, but inauthenticity guarantees failure.
Love that.
Right?
Love that. Listen,
always.
I mean, you are preaching.
What did you believe was possible then? And did you learn to trust your gut then? When did you start learning to trust your intuition, to hear those voices? Because I get impulses too. I get hits of what I'm supposed to do. And I think some people don't get them. So you share a lot of tips in the book, by the way. So we're not gonna be able to share everything on this interview. Read the book. Jamie shares a ton of tips in this book to help you on your journey. If you're a small business, her advice is incredible. If you're growing your business, if you're a big business, if you're a leader, if you're someone who's an entrepreneur, if you're someone who wants to be more creative, all of the chapters in that book give you nuggets of wisdom and advice and tips to help you on your journey. It's really is for everyone, just so you know. So you're going to get some tips, but Jamie, in terms of that intuition and gut, tell us about that Denny's waitress that you were and what was possible then to you.
Yeah. So I've always felt, and I've always felt deep down inside like I was destined to serve in a big way or do something that impacted other people on all of our own journey. I always had that inkling, didn't know what it was. And working as a Denny's waitress, this is so funny, working as a Denny's waitress, oh my gosh. So the Denny, and I was working to try and save up for school and all that, and pay my way through school. And Denny's, it's so funny how so many things teach us lessons, right? So I won't get into this too much, but the Denny's I worked at, the kitchen was a mess in the sense that they would take an hour to get pancakes out sometimes. So I'm an introvert by nature. And I was like, oh my gosh, people are getting mad and they're leaving because it's taking an hour to get pancakes. And I'm not getting a tip. And I really need a tip because I'm trying to pay through school. And so I learned to talk to people and try to be like, and try to just connect with them and ask about their stories and that whole thing. And it probably planted a seed in me of understanding the importance of operations of a business and the right operational infrastructure. So even as a, you know, in that whole different industry as a Denny's waitress, I really think every single thing we go through in life helps us build that foundation, right? Of where we're going to be. But, you know, in the time I was a Denny's waitress, here's really where my gut started speaking to me. And this is for everybody out there. It's never too late to start learning how to hear your own intuition, right? Most people never do. But just like faith or like anything else, I think it's never too late. I think everyone can start now. And I really think that it's a journey. It's a journey of building on experiences and then looking back and going, oh, I didn't listen to my gut there. I had that instinct and it didn't go so well. Or, oh, I decided to go against everyone else. I trusted my gut and here's what happened, right? And I think for all of us, it's every area of life. I mean, this is something a lot of your community might relate to, is like, or not, but if you've ever dated a sketchy guy or you have a friend where you're just like, I don't think they're telling me the truth. Something's not adding up. We kind of know it, right? Like so many people can hopefully relate to this at some point in their life, but they've dated someone where they're like, I don't really believe him that his phone just broke or that he just like disappeared for a day, right? I don't think he, you know, and you can choose, we all choose like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it and I'm just going to stay in love. Or, you know what? Like, okay, I'm done. Like we all know. And I feel like we continue building those experiences in life. And then we look back on them and it's like, now I'm able, you know, looking back on so much of this journey, I'm able to really know that some of my biggest mistakes and misjudgments and miscalculations came when I went against that inkling inside, right? And I trusted people that are touted visionaries or experts. And it's good to trust experts and visionaries, except if your deep gut inkling goes against it, because knowing that you stayed to that through line of authenticity for you and what you're called to do is so important. And learning how to tune in and hear that can literally change the whole course of your life. And one big example of that is probably one of the greatest business lessons I've ever learned and life lessons. And it came down to this moment where after 3 years of hearing no's, and by the way, John, at one point, I think it was 2 years into our business, I actually was able to get, and just to share a scrappy tip for anyone out there, like really building their business who can't afford to hire people, I was like emailing everyone on LinkedIn. I would find anyone that worked at the company. I would just try to get in some way, send them products, ask them to, you know, and I'd finally like hustled my way into a guy named Alan Burke, who was the head of Olive Beauty at QVC. He had built this multi-billion dollar beauty industry there, department there. And I got through to his assistant and I begged her to like have him look at our product and get us meetings and all those things in front of the buyers. And anyways, long story short, I got a call saying he is going to take a call with me and he's reviewed the products. And I thought, oh my gosh, this head of everything, Alan Burke, if he's going to spend his precious time like calling me, it's going to be good. Right. And I was so excited. And I was pacing around waiting for the call in our office, which was our living room. And Paula was there and I was like, I was freaking out. He called. And right when I answered the phone, obviously I was like, I didn't know what we were going to do, right? We were down to no money. I was freaking out. And I said, you know, okay, to my head, I'm like, they're lucky to have us. He's lucky to get us, like all these things, right? Pumping myself up. And I got on the phone and he said, you know, hello, Jamie, this is Alan Burke from QVC. And I'm like, Alan, it's so great to talk to you and this whole thing. And anyways, he got right to the point and he said, we've reviewed your products with all the buyers here in the beauty department. And it's unanimous that it's a no. We're going to pass on your company. You're not the right fit for QVC and you're not the right fit for our customers, but we wish you well. And I was like, oh, but I am the right fit. And I just tried to pour into another pitch. And he thanked me for loving QVC, but said it's a no, got off the phone. Okay. So then I cried myself to sleep 3 nights in a row. If you've ever had bad news and you like wake up in the morning and you hope it was a dream and you're like, oh, it wasn't, right? It was like that day after day after day. So fast forward another year, we're at a big beauty show. And one of the QVC hosts tried our product. There were 6,000 women there. She tried our product and said, you need to be on QVC. She told the buyer, we got one shot. We got our first big yes. But what it meant, and this is one of the greatest life lessons and business lessons I've ever learned as it pertains to trusting your gut and staying authentic to who you are. We got one shot on QVC. And here's what it meant. We got a 10-minute window to go live in front of 100 million homes and sell our product. But what it also meant was, and at the time we were selling only 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, right? Fulfilling them out of our living room, driving to the post office. So we're only selling 2 to 3 orders a day, barely staying alive. They ordered over 6,000 units of our concealer to sell in just a 10-minute window in order to hit their sales goal or not come back. And it was a consignment deal, which meant we weren't paid for any of it. And whatever sold, we got paid for, but whatever didn't sell would get shipped back to us. So it's like never, as an entrepreneur, never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose. But at this point, we were like out of options. And it just felt like, you know what, let's just go all in. So we said yes. We applied for SBA loans. And I think the first 22 banks said no. Bank number 23 gave us an SBA loan to cover just the manufacturing costs of those 6,000 units. And so literally everything was on the line. I flew out to QVC a week early. And you know how a lot of times athletes will envision themselves on the podium or landing the triple axel or scoring the touchdown. Like you visualize stuff. I flew out there a week early and I sat in this rental car in the parking lot of QVC, which is in Pennsylvania. And I just started envisioning everything. Like I was trying to pretend I was an athlete. And I was like visualizing everything I could, like the sold out sign coming up across the screen. And here's the moment that became hard. We hired third-party consultants that are amazing at helping people succeed selling on television. And they all told me the same thing. They said, if you're going to have any shot at success, you need to use this type of model, which was the same type of model I'd seen in magazines my whole life. You need to do your sell this way. And I would argue with them. I'd say, okay, but that's not why I created the product. And also, like, what if I just take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea on national TV so I can prove live the product works? And like, I would say like, oh my gosh, if I'm sitting at home and I am 70 years old, or I have hyperpigmentation or this skin challenge or this skin tone or this skin problem, if I don't see someone that looks like me, how do I know it's going to work for me? And like, we would argue, and they wanted us to win. They wanted the best for us. They're like, listen, this is the best advice we can give you. Here's what you need to do. And like, one thing I'll say is, had I realized that if you're ever going to do anything novel or new, or even it's an idea that's been done a million times, but it's your take on it, of course, experts aren't going to think it's going to work, because subconsciously they only think things are going to work that they've already seen proven work, right? And I didn't know that for a long time, and they mean so well, but they're seeing it. Even though a lot of them are visionaries, they're only able to see what you're doing through their own lens of experience. And so anyways, long story short, I didn't have a chance to do it both ways. It was like everything was on the line. And it's really easy to say, oh, I'm going to stick with authenticity in my mission. But then when you're in a moment where everything's on the line and you know you might lose your entire company, it's really hard to just tune in and trust your gut, right? Put your own gut instinct on a pedestal instead of the expert's advice. And I sat in that car for a week and I stared at the front door of the QVC building. And I knew the next time I walked through those doors, I would either walk out bankrupt or with like my whole life changed. And the more I prayed about it, I would sit there in that car, literally crying, trying to like God, take this from me, because it feels so heavy, and just tell me what to do. And it came down to a couple of things. I imagined who my customer was, and I would just kind of imagine who she is watching at home. And for some reason, I kept imagining like a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry who was like too busy to remember she mattered and remember she's beautiful and that she's enough. And I just remember this moment where I was like, you know what? I would rather, if she's going to bless me with 5 seconds of her precious time, I would rather have her look up on her TV screen and see me showing real women who look like her, calling them beautiful and meaning it. Even if she buys nothing, I'd rather that happen than like me sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so it was like, I knew what I had to do, but it doesn't mean it's easy, right? And when the 10-minute clock started, we went live on the air. And by the way, John, when you probably know this, I didn't know this until I got there. When the 10-minute clock starts, you don't just get 10 minutes for sure. If you're a minute or two in and you're not selling enough, your clock cuts and it jumps down to 2 minutes. And you just like lost 6 minutes. And it's the most stressful thing and most high pressure thing, right? Because they don't mess around. Like you hit sales goals or that's it, which is any business. But so the 10-minute clock goes up. It's like 9:59, 9:58.
Jamie, I got to stop you there for a second.
Yeah,
I want people to realize this, like your future depends on this moment. Like I'm thinking about this. I mean, you and Paulo, everything you've worked towards, you are now going on national television in front of 10 million homes. The light comes on. It's you, a camera, and the viewer.
Because I get a lot of questions from listeners who, because of the things that have happened in their past, they don't know how to trust their intuition.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of questions about decision making and how to truly, in a situation like this, where you are burning through your entire life savings.
Yeah.
You have left your dream job. You have gotten no after no after no after no after no. How do you stay connected to your intuition in a situation like that? What tool do you have, or what advice can you give to somebody who's having trouble hearing what the right decision is in that kind of situation?
Yeah. So I think that intuition is like a muscle that we build over time. And I think it's a lifelong journey that, to really learning how to hear it and to trust it. And one of the greatest tools, I think, is to think back to times in your life where maybe you had this gut feeling to do something and everyone around you said, don't do it. So you listen to them, you didn't trust yourself, and then think about what happened. Right. And then similarly, go back to a time where everyone was like, oh, no way. And you're like, but I love him. I don't think he's lying. I think his phone really did break 5 times every weekend. He didn't disappear, his phone. Like, right. Think about like that situation when everyone was telling you something and you didn't listen, or even your gut was telling you, right? And you didn't listen, and you think back to those times and you start to develop pattern recognition of how it felt in moments in your life when you trusted yourself or didn't, and what happened, and you get better attuned to what that feels like. So
what does it feel like for you in both situations? Like, can you describe what it feels like for you when you're like, yep, no, that's a no?
Yes.
And what does it feel like for you when you're like, I'm sticking with this?
Yeah. Often it's the tiniest of feelings in my gut, right? Some people describe it as like a still small voice. I pray about it. I ask God to give me the answers and I try to live the answers.
Do you feel the answers that God gives you? Like, is that what happens for you when you do this?
Like right now when I look at you, right?
Yeah.
Like I know you're a beautiful soul, right? I just know it. You know it. You feel it. Like I feel like you have good, like you're good. You know what I mean? It's a feeling, right? And we get these feelings, but so much around us is so loud, and we just learn over time. And by the way, not to go, this could be a whole other episode, but especially as women from the time we're young, we learn not to trust ourselves. We walk into our parents fighting and we go, is everything okay? They're like, everything's great. Everything's great, right? To protect us, we start to learn to doubt ourselves,
baloney.
Right?
Yep.
But especially as young girls, you learn to make decisions by consensus, often with your friends, and
making other people happy.
Making other people happy, people pleasing. We're rewarded for pleasing everyone else and almost ignoring what we feel. So if you're someone who's an adult right now, going, I don't even know how to hear my own gut or trust myself. That's why we've been trained out of learning how to do it, right? So it takes intentionality and really deciding, oh, you know what? I'm going to put in some time, even if it's 5 minutes a day, just to thinking about moments in my life where I trusted myself, where I didn't. And if you don't remember any of them, start now.
You know what you just inspired me to think about? I don't even know if it's possible to do this. But imagine if you could go through the rest of today and only make decisions that align with what you truly want. If you don't want to go to that party tonight, don't go. If a friend asks you something and you feel obligated out of guilt to lend them that thing, don't actually lend them the thing.
Yeah.
Eat what you want to eat tonight for dinner. Don't just go to wherever your friends want to go. Like, I think that would be a real eye-opening experiment if you were to do that.
And you start building that muscle, right? And the more you do that, some people don't even pay attention to what they actually want to eat for dinner. They're just like, what sounds good to everyone? But to your point, when you start paying attention, then you also start building that knowing of hearing your own knowing.
Do you think it's possible to discover your unique purpose in life if you are not connected and listening to your intention? And intuition, I mean.
And your own intuition. Here's how I think it's way more likely, and you're going to actually discover more than one purpose often if you're really tuned in to your intuition and you're intentional about it. But what I'll say for someone who feels like they can't hear their gut, but they still want to find their purpose, a friend of mine, Rory Vaden, says that you're best positioned to serve the person you once were. Right. Trent Shelton, our friend, says one day the things you're going through right now will be the things you made it through.
Yeah.
And what I would say to someone listening right now is look at something in the past that has broken your heart, that has caused you grief, that has been something that you care deeply about, whether it's positive or negative, that you've gone through, something you care deeply about, or maybe pain you've gone through, something you have made it through. I believe often when we go through the hardest times in our life, it's for one of two reasons.
What are they?
It is to either equip us with the strength we need to carry the weight of our success that's to come, to carry the weight of our purpose that's to come, or we've gone through these horrible, unspeakable times, things we would never want to happen to us again in our life, because we're actually going to get our greatest source of fulfillment and purpose by one day helping someone else who's going through them. And
I love that saying that you're best equipped to help the person you used to be.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Jamie Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.